what he was going to say. And then when he drops this crazy stuff about how he sent threatening letters to schools and universities not to divulge Trump's grades or his SAT scores, and how he sent threatening letters, threatening legal action in case they did, stuff like that. Stuff that he said about blacks in Chicago, and no, every black leader that runs a country is an asshole. It's an asshole country, and if you were really living under a rock, I suppose that would be kind of enlightening to hear stuff like that. But I mean, people like you and me, we know all this stuff already, right? It's just extra stuff, and it really doesn't surprise us or shock us anymore.
Yeah, it is. I mean, some of the stuff like what he said about like Chicago, like that, I had to admit that kind of was like, wow. But I mean, I don't know. I would kind of go to the side that it's true, but it's a little more spectacular, but than kind of more legal based, which I think was kind of on one hand like refreshing for people who were sitting through his testimony, didn't really want to hear that much about it, but then they saw the statement, and then like it was kind of a bombshell. Is what it was, kind of like not really a bombshell, but like a flashy thing to kind of like put in the front to people who are not really interested in delving deep into the legal stuff. Because again, a part of a really broader attack on the character of Trump, and he also carried out orders for Trump to tell contractors that Trump was refusing to pay them money owed for their services. And interestingly enough, he also said about the Vietnam draft thing, you think I'm stupid? I wasn't going to Vietnam. I'm just giving out for that bone spur and all that stuff. Cohen did offer another important piece of exculpatory information for the president. He said despite many rumors, he had no tape from an elevator that showed Trump hitting his wife, Melania. So, yeah, and I think that's probably, I think it's probably true. I'd be very surprised if he would get physical with Melania. I obviously hope he wouldn't. But, again, so a lot of broad attacks on Trump's character, but, again, stop short of going too far or really attacking Trump in such a demanding way, but did provide a pretty helpful image of reaffirming a lot of stuff that we already knew, to be honest, as you said. Of Trump being kind of a racist and really just kind of a scummy human being, all in all. But the thing is, though, as we can safely assume with most things these days, Cohen's testimony is going probably to reinforce the partisan divide over the president. Whether it'll be regarded as a seminal investigation, though, is an open question at this time. Cohen tried to warn the Republicans that today they were just like he was, which is pretty interesting. Kind of someone who is in Trump's tail, following them, spear catchers, bootleggers, whatever you want to call them. And they responded by questioning, of course, why they should listen to a man convicted of lying. So it was a kind of, again, a broadly party line affair. But before we go on to something else, where do you think this ranks in the scheme of events that have taken place over this Russia saga over the past 2 or 3 years?
Well, I don't know. I think it's more than a footnote. I mean, he did actually make some news here. These checks. I mean, we knew he got reimbursed, but now we actually can see the checks. We see the signatures. It's more proof. It's more tangible. And the thing he told us about his foreknowledge of the WikiLeaks dumps, that's news. But aside from that, there isn't anything really groundbreaking here on the Mueller investigation. But I think that Cohen maybe knows more. It's just that these topics were off limits, that Mueller didn't want those things discussed. I mean, think about all the other things that the Trump organization is mixed up in. All these sales of apartments to Russian oligarchs, for example, all his shady real estate deals, his relationship with Deutsche Bank. I mean, they could have had a field day with Cohen here if they really were unbridled. But I think that there were some pretty severe limits on what could be discussed here.
I actually did see that about limits being placed on the questions able to be asked in the first place. But didn't really figure out or read what they were. Like, what was some of the things that were off limits to the
I
questioners?
thought, from what I had heard, everything to do with the Russia investigation was off limits, and yet we heard about the WikiLeaks. His foreknowledge of the WikiLeaks dump. So that's something to do with the Russia investigation. So I was a little confused about that because I thought that everything was going to be off base, and that he would mostly talk about Trump's character or have stories about, his business dealings that were with individuals that were outside of the Russia probe. And yet he didn't really go into that much either. So I was somewhat disappointed that, beyond his opening statement, which was, very effective, I thought, the question and answer period didn't really reveal a whole lot more, I didn't think.
Yeah, there really is kind of the constant refrain that we've all kind of been saying for the past few years is we have to wait, obviously, for Robert Mueller. He'll come in and say this, end this story officially. And that kind of brings us to the question. There has been some rumors that the Mueller report would be coming out very soon. What has been the latest on that? Because I heard it was coming out next week, as in this week, but
right.
Then that was pushed back. So where are we with that?
Well, the last thing I heard was that we weren't getting anything this week. And beyond that, there hasn't been any news about that as far as I know. These things just tend to drag out. I guess they're trying to wind up things, but there's loose ends that they thought they would be able to tie up by now, and they haven't, and so it drags on a little more. So that's all I know.
Yeah, there has been some pretty interesting reports I've seen of prosecutors kind of asking around for new jobs that worked on the Mueller campaign, or not the Mueller campaign, but the Mueller probe, and so that does kind of show you that they're definitely not just getting started. They are wrapping this thing up, thank goodness. But even still though, there is so much more to this beyond Russia. Just the Trump organization, the Trump Foundation. It's like this guy seems to just have a mountain of legal troubles that he just can't see his way out of. So liberals don't really need to spare if this comes out and nothing major is from the Mueller report. But now, as we kind of zoom in here a little bit more on one moment of the hearing that I found really particularly interesting, and it kind of represents the Republicans' kind of ineffective attack on Cohen and his character, as Mark Meadows, about 90 minutes through the hearing and the Michael Cohen testimony, a woman rose behind Mark Meadows as the North Carolina Republican grilled President Trump's former fixer on his characterization of the president as a racist person. So this woman was, coincidentally enough, African-American, Lynn Patton, a longtime Trump family aide and official at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And she's African-American, probably most importantly for the point that Meadows was trying to make, but here is how he kind of used her in a very cynical way. Just take a listen to this. All right, ads can't happen, but yeah, still it was kind of about 90 minutes away, and it was really kind of one of the biggest sticking points that I think Republicans wanted to disprove about Trump being a racist. And
is there a book
really
deal coming or
get
anything
him under
like
the
that?
shell.
I have no book deal right now in the process. I have been contacted by
and
many.
So that was what they were trying to do. And this is, again, give him credit. This is one of the moments where he, to the biggest degree, kept his school.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed this one. I wasn't watching when this happened, so I can't really comment on it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'll play it here for the listeners in a second. I'll give you kind of a little bit of a background because I don't think you can hear it when we play it, but here is the moment in question.
Yes, I do.
I asked Lynn to come today in her personal capacity to actually shed some light. How long have you known Miss Patton?
I'm responsible for Lynn Patton joining the Trump organization and the job that she currently holds.
Well, I'm glad you acknowledged that, because you made some very demeaning comments about the president that Ms. Patton doesn't agree with. In fact, it has to do with your claim of racism. She says that as a daughter of a man born in Birmingham, Alabama, that there is no way that she would work for an individual who was racist. How do you reconcile the two of those, Mr.
As neither should I, as the son of a Holocaust survivor.
But, Mr. Cohen, I guess what I'm saying is I've talked to the president over 300 times. I've not heard one time a racist comment out of his mouth in private. So how do you reconcile it? Do you have proof of those conversations?
I would ask you to
Do you have tape recordings of those conversations?
No, sir.
Well, you've taped everybody else. Why wouldn't you have a tape?
That's also not true, sir. That's not true.
You haven't taped anybody?
I have taped.
Estimate, because I've heard it's over 200 times.
Cool. But I would ask
so
you,
why
if
would
you ask me a question, sir.
Do you have
so
proof? Do you have proof? Yes or no?
I do.
Oh, where's the proof?
Ask Ms. Patton how many people who are black are executives at the Trump organization.
Yeah, so that was kind of the moment. There was really kind of a contentious moment between Michael Cohen and Mark Meadows of North Carolina, probably one of Trump's biggest defenders. And it was really kind of awkward because he went on to say and shed some light on the statements. We pretty much used her as literally a human prop to say, look, Trump's not racist. He hired Lynn Patton as an African-American person in the organization. But it turns out, apparently, Michael Cohen was instrumental in bringing Lynn Patton into the fold here. But Meadows says, you made some very demeaning comments about the president that Ms. Patton doesn't agree with. In fact, it has to do with your claim of racism. She says that as a daughter of a man born in Birmingham, Alabama, there is no way that she would work for an individual who was racist. How do you reconcile that? And then he goes on to say, neither should I as the son of a Holocaust survivor, which was pretty disturbing. So Patton remains standing for less than a minute, but Meadows' chief of staff whispered her to sit down so the camera could see her face and get. But pretty much, it was a big kind of show. It was for the cameras and pretty much really kind of a cringeworthy almost display of this is my kind of like token black person hire that Trump did to do. And the fact that Mark Meadows kind of utilized her to like parade her out in front of everyone was kind of a thing that drew a lot of criticism from a lot of media observers.
Yeah, you can understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been saying on your show, I mean, for the last 2 years that I thought that Trump was a racist. And, you know, these little token things don't convince me. When you hear about things that he says in private, you know, and even in public, he just makes disparaging comments about blacks on occasion. And he's got a long history of racist things. So, you know, I didn't really learn anything all that much from this testimony. Nothing really shocked me. I think that you have to be someone who's not really paying much attention to the political scene and who just tuned in today to really, you know, feel shocked about any of this stuff.
Yeah, it was a really interesting, just on the broader point of not really so much that Trump was doing it, but like Mark Meadows, who supposedly was a bit more of a competent and experienced politician, kind of making that kind of error of optics. But it just shows you a lot of these people, they don't have the best perspective on these things because they don't hear a lot of outside voices, I guess you could assume.
Yeah, I mean, these are not politically correct people. Republicans in general, I think, are kind of have a blind spot in that direction, and so they don't really understand how some people are going to view this kind of display.
Yeah, And I think they will definitely kind of learn the brunt of that. Like, even for me, as someone who isn't very experienced with a lot of like racial struggles that I've